The book that best encapsulates the theme, stories that matter, for me at the moment is Majak Daw's book, Majak, which has just come out, and I am partway through reading it, and I'm absolutely in love with it. Majak is an AFL football player who played for North Melbourne and is now playing for the Melbourne Demons, my team, and it really gets behind some of the news articles and the headlines that we've seen about a man who has had a lot said about him, but hasn't really had the chance to do the speaking himself. And is someone who is not naturally a public person when it comes to talking about his personal life. He's definitely public insofar as his sport and his athletic abilities, but really, we've never really heard from him. And his is a really interesting story about, coming from a very different part of the world. He's a Sudanese and making it in AFL football at the highest level and not really being prepared for what that really means. Participating in AFL football is to participate in the centre of Australian culture in many ways. And Australians often see themselves reflected in that game. And Majak having to straddle many responsibilities at once clearly takes a toll on a person. And the way that he's able to tell his story in his book is phenomenal, courageous, more than I could ever do, and is an offering that I think is a really important one. Australia is a multicultural society. We often say that, but I don't think I think there is greater room to really celebrate and appreciate difference, and doing that via stories, in literature and in a book like Majak's is a really powerful way, a powerful medium. I think Majak had an incident at the Balti Bridge which left us all with question marks. And in his book, he really gets into talking about what led him to that moment, and even the moment itself, which was quite challenging to read without feeling a sense of personal responsibility, because we've all got friends who may be going through difficult times, but you may just not know how difficult a time they are going through unless you ask them. And Majak talks about perhaps if he had reached out to family around him, he wouldn't have been in the position he was at the Balti Bridge. So there was a lot of personal reflection that I had along the way reading that book, and I'm still going. And I think it's a really powerful story that matters. And, hopefully if everyone read a book or a story like Majak's, we might make different decisions when it comes to caring for people around us. He's a football player, and often we think, they're tough physically, they can put up with a lot mentally on and off the field. And I think we thought that, you sort of see headlines and they come and then they go. But then you think, once you're out of the news cycle, well, the person is the same person. They've dealt with it now. They're on the other side of it, but clearly not. So, it taught me compassion. If I was on a space exploration mission and I could take one book, I would probably take Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Or is it Willy Wonka? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think it's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. My favorite childhood book. It just makes me happy. And I think if I was on a space exploration mission, I'd be missing my family, and I think a book that connects me to my childhood, it would make me feel warm. And I just love chocolate. And if I can't be eating chocolate, I want to be reading about chocolate. If I could be inside a book, I'd like to be inside Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's just every sweet tooth's fantasy. And I was so jealous of Charlie. I also wanted to live in a house like he did, even though he was very poor. I just liked the warmth that was described in his life. He got to live with his grandparents. It was just a nice childhood he had. Being poor felt really fun in that book. So I don't know. I think reading that up in space, even if things went wrong and Houston couldn't contact me anymore, I think I'd be happy. I remember I used to go to libraries after school, sometimes away from my mum to pick me up, or just like on the weekends. But yeah, my memory of libraries as a kid was just getting in trouble by older people who were there being quiet, and I would just be laughing. And it would just be from, just reading silly books, but also, I don't know, finding the dictionary or like the anatomy books and just showing either my sisters or my friends, private parts or circling dirty words, like, just body parts. To be honest, I've always been juvenile, and I've always been told off, and I'm just a distraction. All my school report cards said I'm easily distracted, and I distract others, and that extended to the library as well, the public library in Ashburton in Melbourne. So yeah, I just remember always annoying like regular older people that would be there just reading the newspaper or magazines with my childishness and my immaturity. But it was fun. It was always fun, like getting told off and then running away to a different part of the library and then, hiding from I just treated the library after school like it was a playground, which is probably not how you're supposed to treat libraries, but it was really fun. And then my mum would come and she'd feel proud that I spent so much time in the library, thinking that I was studying, getting ahead of my classmates, but really I was just bothering older people. Malcolm X's autobiography was a book I read when I was in my early teens, I think. And definitely, I read that feeling like, I want to stand up for justice and fight injustice and call out racism. And as a young Muslim of Sri Lankan descent living in Australia, dealing with racism and seeing it around me, especially after 9/11, I identified with Malcolm's journey and his life in lots of different ways. He was a member of the Nation of Islam, and then he became a mainstream Muslim. And I could relate to a lot of the things that he was saying in the way that there is overt and covert racism that he needed to call out. And yeah, I think he was definitely responsible for a big part of my political awakening. And when I went to New York City, I went to the mosque that he prayed in, and went to the cemetery that he's buried in, just to have a look. And it was all because of reading that book in my teens. I was heavily influenced by him, and he's definitely. I feel like he's someone that I know, even though I just read that book, and then I've gone on to watch all the YouTube videos that he's featured in. But yeah, it was probably a book that I read fastest when I was in my teens. But he also did have his he went through a very big journey. And what I like about Malcolm's autobiography is that he's honest with himself and the reader about the people that he trusted, and then people, and then the regrets that he's had in his life and the changes that he's made. And very relatable story in that he makes mistakes, but then doesn't let those mistakes sort of shame him into inaction. So I liked sort of his story. It's great when you come across a book that speaks to what you're thinking and what you're feeling, but you can't articulate yourself. I think autobiographies are great because they're not fiction. So these are people that lived, and good autobiographies are relatable. So you feel like you live a similar life to them. So I could achieve those things. I recently read Andre Agassi's book Open, which is a book that surprised. Like I didn't realize how much I didn't think I'd enjoy it at all. It's about tennis, but after reading that, I thought I could become a tennis player, and I'm well into my mid to late 30s. But it was so relatable. Like he talked about childhood and his dad and the struggles, not really liking tennis. A game that he had to try mentally. He struggled to commit to it emotionally. And I feel like that about a lot of the things that I start. I'm like, I don't really know if I like this, but you've got to put in a great effort to stick to it. So, and that's how he felt. And yeah, now I think I can maybe play next year's Australian Open. Well, it's like tennis is like the thing that allows him to have his human journey. You know, it's a thing he's pushed up against, and he has to either use for him or against him. And we've all got those challenges in life, and you know, it's about how you respond to them. You can't really help control what you can't control, so you've only got the choices in front of you. And all these autobiographies that I've felt that have really resonated with me tell the same sort of story. You know, you can only control what you can control, and you've only got a set of choices in front of you, and you've got to make your choices. And then if you make a mistake, well, stand up and try again. The book that always puts a smile on my face is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, however you say it. But it's a great book, a French author, translated into English, and always makes me happy. A simple story about a little prince who lives on this very small planet, where he falls in love with a rose. He meets a pilot or the aviator, becomes friends with a fox, meets a snake, all sorts of adventures he has. But it's a very simple story, but it appeals to, well, the more you read it as an adult, the more you get out of it. He talks about life and the different characters you meet in life, and how best to live life. Always makes me happy. I always keep it within reach so that I can, you know, read it and feel 10% happier. Well, actually, I've just written the first of two. So it's a 2-book thing. I've written one, and it's getting illustrated at the moment. So yeah, it's a novel. It's like The Bad Guys, whatever you call that, like a graphic novel. Yeah. So if I think for 9 or 10-year-olds, I'm really excited. So I think it's out starting next year. Like I finished writing at the start of the year, but books take 8. Like they've got this whole schedule of when that goes out and published. I don't know how it works, but yeah. Anyway, you'll be hearing from me.